What is your favorite sex scene in the Bible? Not sure if the entirety of Song of Songs counts, but if it does, that one. There's not too many good X scenes to pick from since it's usually only mentioned when someone does something wrong. All the good, mutually fulfilling X in the Bible was probably just recorded as he knew his wife and she begat a son. Whenever the text stops to dwell on it, it's because someone's raping his sister or something. Your navel is perfectly formed like a goblet filled with mixed wine. Between your thighs lies a mound of wheat bordered with lilies. Your breasts are like two fawns, twin fawns of a gazelle. Song of Songs 7, 2-3. Yup. That whole book is what we in the fanfiction biz call a lemon scene. That one where David cuts off and skins 200 DS. Worst side quest ever. The fact David gathered twice the amount he was asked to bring makes this even better. A normal person would be like, alright, that's all of them, let's go back and get this stupid ass fetch quest over with. But not David. He cuts off 100 foreskins then goes, you know what? This is fun, let's keep going. The king was probably horrified. It's not my favorite because of the X, but because of the revenge. In Genesis 34, this woman named Dinah is hanging out when this dude going by sees her and rapes her. He is some prince or something and infatuated by her, so he and his father go to her father begging to marry her. Her father, Jacob, hears this and is like, she can't marry him, you all are not Jewish, but I guess I could be convinced if you and your kingdom's men were circumcised. So father and son are super pumped and go and get circumcised along with all the men of the kingdom. While they are still in pain from the procedure, Dinah's brothers go in and slaughter them. Edit. Jacob not Joseph. Edit 2. Brothers not brother. Also, when dad finds out what two of his sons have done, he's terrified. Everyone is going to hate us. We could be driven away. But everyone is like, two of that guy's sons wiped out an entire town. Imagine what all 12 of his sons could do. And they all feared the guy. Genesis 6 describes fallen angels finding the daughters of mankind to be beautiful, so they took whomever they pleased and had offspring with them, who are the Nephilim, historically translated as giants, the mighty men of old. Genesis 6, 1-4. When man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive. And they took as their wives any they chose. 3 Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh, his days shall be 120 years. For the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Big ass edit. In order to save me a lot of replying to one comment at a time claiming that the sons of God don't refer to angels, I'll just show where I get this inference. You can decide for yourself if it is reasonable in light of the following. The term sons of God shows up in elsewhere in the Bible, in the book of Job, and you can see from its usage and the context where it appears that this term seems to refer to angels and other heavenly beings. Satan himself was among the sons of God. Ezekiel 28 contains an oracle against a fallen guardian cherub whose story sounds like that of Satan, addressed as the king of Tyre. Take a look. I think it is fair to say that cherubim were angels, but it depends on how technical your definition is. Furthermore, Peter and Jude from the New Testament seem to interpret Genesis 6, 1-4 as being about fallen angels. 2 Peter 2, 4-5. 4 If God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, the Greek term here is Tartarus, not Hades, and is the only occurrence of the term, and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. 5 If he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. Peter goes on to list instances of notable sin from Genesis in the order they appear. This suggests that his mention of angels sinning right before he mentions the flood and Noah is a mention of this instance at the beginning of Genesis 6. Jude 1, 6-7. 6 And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. 7 Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulge in immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. Here, Jude speaks about angels kept in chains until judgment day, just as Sodom etc., which likewise indulged in immorality and pursued unnatural desire. Inferring from how Jude seems to be referring to this passage, and how he and Peter refer to these as angels whom God has chained in darkness as they await their judgment, I'm calling them fallen angels. Hey, so that's where the Diablo series gets its lore from. The one when David's son Absalom overthrown him with a coup, and to symbolize his dominance decided to frick every one of David's concubines on the roof of his house, so that all Jerusalem could watch him. Not sure it counts as a X scene, but there's a verse where some women reminisce about some men who are hung like horses and come like donkeys. Ezekiel 23:20. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, Behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived, and bare Jacob a son. TLDR, wife and husband spice up their ex-life by letting the husband frick the maid while the wife watches. Maybe she joined in, it doesn't say. Under his eye. That one where the two sisters get the dad drunk. Their mother is still salty about it. You're underselling it a bit. They got him drunk, and proceeded to start a whole country from their offsprings. There's surprisingly little mention of Song of Solomon in this thread. My estranged father and his second wife had this as a reading at their wedding. God knows why. It was in a church too, and from memory the lady who was giving the reading spoke the wrong bit and was saying the weird X stuff. I still remember that awkward quiet laughing from everyone. Funnily enough, it wasn't the weirdest thing that happened that day. It was later in the night when my dad was giving a speech and toasted his new wife's dead first husband with a comment along the lines of thanks for dying cause then I got to marry her. His kids were there as well. Such a bizarre day. Thankful. We're reaching fetish levels that shouldn't even exist. The one where God kills a guy for coming outside instead of properly impregnating his brother's widow like he should. It was because of the inheritance law at the time his brother died childless, and that guy was supposed to give his widow a kid so that kid could get the dead brother's inheritance. But the living brother was selfish, he didn't want to give his brother's widow a kid, and he wanted a larger piece of the inheritance, so he tried to game the system by sleeping with her repeatedly but refusing to get her pregnant. That's why he had to go. Obviously Lot and his daughters. There's an old dude who had two sons, both had the same wife and both died because God didn't like them. So the old dude's daughter-in-law disguised herself as a hooker and hooked up with him without revealing her identity. She later had a reunion with the dude and had children with him. Yikes. Update 1. Thanks for reminding me about third son. Since his daughter-in-law was a widow again, the old dude promised to let his youngest son take her as a wife once his son is at the age suitable for marriage. However, the old dude didn't fulfill his promise. It was then his daughter-in-law plotted the hooker plan. Update 2. Thanks for all the upvotes. I'm absolutely flattered. You're thinking of Judah and Tamar. Genesis 38. Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Judah, the one whose husband died, whose brother-in-law Onan was supposed to raise up an heir with her. This was so his possessions could remain in his family via an heir. He instead simply used her for X but pulled out, not doing his duty by denying his brother an heir, and God killed Onan for this. Judah was supposed to provide her a husband from one of his sons, but when he came of age, he failed to do so. She veiled herself and pretended to be a cult prostitute where she knew Judah would be at a certain time. Judah hired her, but didn't have the goods to pay her with a goat from his flock, so he left his signet, cord, and staff with her as collateral, and left to get his goat. She then bailed with his stuff. He sent his servants out to look for the cult prostitute to get his signet, cord, and staff back, but couldn't find her, and didn't look too hard because he didn't want to be exposed and humiliated by having his servants ask all the people there if they saw a prostitute with his signet. Later, Tamar was found to be pregnant, and Judah got super peered and asked for her to be burned, and she brings out his stuff, and saying that the man whose stuff that was ought to be punished as well, and Judah was humiliated in front of everyone and admitted that he wronged her by not fulfilling his promise to her to provide her a husband. The story is actually an interesting look into customs of the era around inheritance and treating women right. The second son, Onan, was supposed to marry Tamar, the wife of the first son, after died. This was so that Onan could give Tamar a son that would count as son. Tamar's son would then get 1/2 of Onan's father Judah's estate while Onan would get 1/4. Onan tries to get around this by avoiding impregnating Tamar, not caring that this will leave her with no support system when she's old. God sees what he's doing and kills him. Judah then sends Tamar away with a promise that she can eventually marry his third son when he is old enough, but Judah is now terrified of Tamar not knowing it was God who killed his sons and isn't planning on following through. Tamar eventually realizes this, and instead of waiting in limbo forever not allowed under penalty of death to marry someone else and secure her place in another family unless Judah lets her out of her ties to his family, she comes up with a plan to get Judah to fulfill the customary obligation his family owes her of giving her a son that counts as her son. https://jwa.org/encyclopedia/article/Tamar-Bible. I mean, there's that snuff film where David sends a dude off to die so he can sleep with his wife. There's also a tale of a 3-day bestiality session where there's nothing but a 72-hour swallowing session. 3-day bestiality session where there's nothing but a 72-hour swallowing session. It's okay, Jonah, you can just say you screwed up and God sent a whale to eat you as punishment. I took a class in college that broke down the Bible as literature, discovered way more X scenes in the Bible than I ever realized. David and Bathsheba. David was the king of Israel and one time noticed from the roof of his palace a beautiful young woman bathing, Bathsheba. He has his way with her and she gets pregnant. Problem is she is married. But it's no problem for King David, because she is married to one of his soldiers, Uriah. David tried to get Uriah to sleep with his wife, to cover up her pregnancy, but he refuses to leave his post and stays with the troops. So David commands Uriah be sent to the front lines of the battle, where he will surely meet his death. He dies. Uriah is now out of the way, they get married and Bathsheba has David's baby worry-free. And then that baby dies. But later she does give birth to the future King Solomon. Thank you for pointing out it was David on the roof and not Bathsheba. That song has got everyone thinking she was on the roof bathing, like she wants to be seen. Whereas, in reality, she was likely in a walled women's bathing area and the king's unique vantage point on top of a grand palace was what let him see her. I love the story about Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. They got it on and the walls fell. This one is a little FD up. There was this one man, a Levite, who's married to an unfaithful wife. She went back to her hometown and stayed with her father for 4 months. The Levite went to fetch her and they went back home. It was the journey home that we are interested in. Night fell while they were still traveling. An old man saw the couple traveling through the city of Jabi, so he offered them both to stay at his place. While they were having dinner in the old man's home, the men of the city, Benjamites, banged on the door so that they can have sex with the Levite. The old man pleaded them not to mistreat his guest. Then the Levite grabbed his wife and gave her to the men. The men, frustrated that they cannot lay with the man, went on to rape and abuse the wife instead for the entirety of the night. By sunrise, the men of the city was finished with the wife and left her by the doorstep where she collapsed and died. When the Levite wakes up by the morning, he saw his wife dead by the doorstep. So he took her and chopped her body into 12 pieces and sent one for each tribe, along with details of the crime. The rest of the Israelites were angered by the crime and demanded the tribe of Benjamin to surrender the rapists so that they can be put to death. Benjamin instead opted to protect the rapists. When the rest of Israel realized that Benjamin would not surrender the rapists, they assembled an army and waged war against Benjamin, which decimated the tribe, so much so that by the time of David, Benjamin remains to be the smallest of the 12 tribes. Personally, I think the Levite himself also deserved to be punished. The one where Joseph doesn't F Potiphar's wife. Take a moment to pity Hosea, whom God ordered to marry an unfaithful woman who would cheat on him so that she could symbolize how the damn Israelites kept fooling around with other gods. When she runs off, he has to buy her back from the man she's shacked up with, because God ordered him to. Hey God, maybe you could, appear in a burning bush or something awesome like that instead. Fuck off Hosea, you're marrying the S. Never thought I'd consider picking the Bible up again. My favorite one starts at Genesis 19. Sneak peek, come on guys, don't rape these angles. That's rude. Rape my virgin data instead. Don't know about that, but being fricked by angles sounds like my last geometry exam. Edit, I meant to say angels. Man, that was a crazy exam. The one where the dude pulls out, and God is like, bruh, I made X end like that so you could make more people, then God kills him or something. It's in the Old Testament after the Torah but before Isaiah. The quote is spilled his seed on the ground, which always gave me the impression he was whacking it while staring God defiantly in the eye. Probably that time the Israelites blamed a plague on people marrying foreigners, thereby displeasing God. So this one guy that's just over it gets up and stabs a newlywed couple through their stomachs, mid-coitus, on their wedding night. Numbers 25, 6-9. Just then one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman into his family, in the sight of Moses and in the sight of the whole congregation of the Israelites, while they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he got up and left the congregation. Taking a spear in his hand, he went after the Israelite man into the tent, and pierced the two of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. So the plague was stopped among the people of Israel. Nevertheless, those that died by the plague were 24,000. In the Gospel according to Mark, when the Garden of Gethsemane was raided, a young man ran away stark naked. I forgot who it was, but it is speculated that the naked young man was Mark. Edit, a word. Oh hi Mark. A man goes into a city and finds out that everyone in the city are sodomites. The city dwellers saw some fresh meat and started chasing him. The man fled the city and found refuge in a farmhouse. The sodomites from the city followed him all the way there and demanded that the head of the house release his guests so they may sodomize him. The head of the household told them that sodomy is a sin and offered a second option. He sent all his daughters and female slaves to the sodomites so that they wouldn't have to sin. In the morning the head of the household discovered that one daughter and a slave escaped from the sodomites and came home. So he had his daughter and slave killed. The end. What is even the lesson here? I'm surprised no one has already said the Samson orgy for 7 days locked in just before he got his hair cut off. Non-canon, Enoch was really popular with the angels. They even took him up to heaven to show him around. he ended up inviting some angels to his parties on Earth. They showed up and everyone loved them. They would get drunk and hang out. Well, a few of them started having sex with the mortals, which was pretty chill until a few of them got preggo. Oh man, the kids that come out when angels and humans bang is real not cool. Giant rock monsters basically are how they are described. Anyways, God saw these insane rock children running around and was AWWW. And he called up his boy Noah and was, yo, I'm flooding this build a boat, no rock monsters allowed. Let's not forget that at some point it was only Adam and Eve's kids in the world. And some serious reproduction was needed to populate the whole world. Just saying. I think if I remember correctly there is allusion in Genesis to other people being on the earth. I'm pretty sure there's a verse about Adam and Eve's sons going out and finding a wife, or something along those lines. Therefore meaning that Adam and Eve were the first humans God made, but not the only humans God made. Edit. Found it. Remembered slightly wrong, but basically Adam and Eve first had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel and feared God would just let anyone kill him. God said he wouldn't let anyone kill Cain or the punishment on them would be even worse. This implied there were other people about to kill Cain. Thanksgiving pie. The one where God fricked us all and created humanity. I'm not a Christian, but now I wanna read Bible. I'm reading a lot of these and just thinking, wait a minute, gays are getting a scapegoated the frick out of. There's a fair few issues closer to home that needs addressing. Not quite a scene, but a vision of a war riding a 7-headed 10-horned beast while drunk on the blood of the saints. Revelation 17, 1-6 The Whore of Babylon. 1 Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, come, I will show you the judgment of a great prostitute who is seated on many waters, 2 with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. 3 And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. 4 The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with golden jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. 5 And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. 6 And I saw the woman, drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. I don't like this scene, but I found this passage, in fact, the whole of Revelation chapter 17, along with Revelation 13 super useful because together, these chapters identify the Antichrist and the second beast. They are the last people most would even suspect. Plus, they're super old. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.